when you look at what Georgia's accomplished over these last 3 years, two national championships, an SEC title, two losses, and I don't even know how many wins, almost 50 wins in 3 seasons. There's a lot that Georgia's done really well. But you can always get better, right? And there's a particular thing that Kirby's got to handle coming into 2024 that if he does, everybody better watch out. What is that thing? Well, here we go. It's this section of the schedule right here. Okay? This is going to be the toughest little stretch that Georgia's going to have to deal with. Now, back-to-back Auburn, Alabama is not great, but going to Texas, then you have your biggest game of the year against the Gators, and then you go to Ole Miss. Georgia is going to have to figure out how to deal with all of these games because the back-to-back that is going to be the emotion of Florida and going to Ole Miss 7 days, a week later, that's really asking a lot of a team. Now, Georgia's done this a lot lately, if you recall. There's been more than a couple of times where Georgia's been in this situation. For instance, last year or this past season, whatever it was, they played the Gators. Then they played a really huge game against Missouri. Now, it was at home, and then they backed that up a week later by playing Ole Miss. In 2022, it wasn't quite the same way, but you did have Florida, who was a disaster at that time, with a showdown with so-called number one Tennessee. When I was trying to say it wasn't the same way. It wasn't the same way in 2021. So there was really, I would say the stretch in that one was Kentucky, Auburn. This Arkansas, Auburn, Kentucky, back-to-back ranked teams, that was pretty challenging. But heading back to 2024, okay, this little stretch right here, it's a 4-week period. I don't know if this will define Georgia's regular season, but if they win 2 of these 3 games, or if they win the right 2 of 3, then they will probably play in the SEC championship. Okay, these are 2 challenging situations for Georgia, and if Kirby gets this right, if he handles it well, college football better watch out. I mean, there's a lot of hyperbole that happens this time of the year. I mean, there's a lot of hyperbole that happens all the time, but when you're playing your arch rival, who is not good, I'm not hurting any feelings with that. When you're playing your arch rival and then you got to go on the road to a team that I think is probably pretty good in Ole Miss, that makes it tough, man. That makes a challenging situation. What's not challenging is using this Eco-Poly porch rocker. It's exactly what you want, guys, for hanging out with your grandkids, hanging out with your kids, for your mountain house, for your Georgia room. These are all customizable colors. I was talking about the Rebels earlier. I think you could probably get this very close to, Ole Miss, blue, that light, there it is. So now we're not going to do that. We're going to stick with Georgia. But you get my point here. This is made with completely recycled plastics, got a 20-year warranty. In all of my life in purchasing things, when you're getting a 20-year warranty from something that you're going to use every single day, that's not common. Okay, that's not common. But our friends in the heart of Georgia, Dodge County, and Eastman, they're putting this together in the heart of Georgia, and they're giving you a great deal, a great offer. And those are all listed down below. Make sure you're taking advantage of that today. Georgia's going to have to take advantage of what they built. There's not a lot of teams that have the infrastructure that Georgia's got, that have the players, the coaches, the commitment, the institutional give a hoot about it. There's not a lot of people like that. Okay, Georgia, Bama, Ohio State. I don't know about Michigan. I know they just won the national championship. I'm just saying. I think probably Texas, but and I think perhaps LSU. But you cannot say that Tennessee's really, really trying to win. They might be, but they don't have the coaches. Everybody around college football is missing a particular ingredient that Georgia, Ohio State, and in the recent past, Alabama have all had. That's maybe why those teams are winning a lot of games and winning national championships. Things have changed precipitously for UW, Alabama, and Michigan. So 3 of the 4 teams in the playoff. But if Kirby can just figure out how to handle this about 9 months from now, Georgia will be in a very good position. Again, checking the schedule out. This thing is not the easiest I've ever seen in my entire life. You're going to open up with Clemson. a game, Georgia's probably going to win that game. I don't know how easy that's going to be, but they're probably going to win that game, okay? I don't trust I watch a lot of Clemson. My wife is a Clemson fan, has been for decades. She remembers, Bobby Bowden and Bobby Bowden's son. She remembers Ken Hatfield. She remembers Danny Ford. She remembers all that. It's not always been pretty there. And, we watched enough of it in our house to know Clemson's limited right now on offense. Defense is not that bad. Then you got to go to Kentucky. Georgia should win that game. I mean, they should. Could they lose to Kentucky? They could lose to Kentucky. They could lose to Clemson. They probably won't. You got a huge game against Alabama after that. Georgia will be up for that game. I don't know if they'll win the game, but they'll be up for it. Auburn's going to have to get a lot better to beat Georgia. Mississippi State's going to have to get a lot better to beat Georgia. Then you got to go to Texas, Darrell K. Royal Stadium. It's tricky, man. This is the stretch of time that I'm talking about with the Dogs. Are they going to get this done? And if they do, watch out. You go to Texas. I mean, probably between Bama and Texas, if they win one of those two games, they probably, not certainly, will be in the SEC championship. Then you got a week off. You can say what you want about Florida. It's an extremely emotional game. It just is. So you're going to have to navigate that after a bye week. And then you got to go on the road to Ole Miss. So you've got 3 legit games in a row there with the Gators, the Rebels, and Tennessee. They're going to all be tricky games in some fashion. What I mean by that is Florida will be an emotional game. That will not be a difficult game necessarily, although they haven't just wiped Florida off the map lately either. The Rebels, I mean, that could be for Ole Miss being in the SEC championship game. We don't know. And then you've got Tennessee coming to Athens. I mean, Tennessee's going to have to play a lot better than they have these last 3 years against Georgia to win. And they've had a lot of change. That game is not super frightening. And then you got UMass and the Jackets, who are better than they were closing this thing out. So it really, for me, is this stretch. Which game is it? It's this game. It's this game. But it's this stretch. And there is a difference. There is a difference, by the way. But man, I tell you what now. If they can just navigate that and handle that, it's going to be hard for people nationally to catch them. Not as hard as it used to be, just because, but we will know a lot about the Dogs by that stretch right there. If you're missing out on our newsletter, that's your mistake. We don't crank it out as much in the off season as we do in the regular season, but when there's breaking news, you don't have to wait on, you don't have to go, if you don't like Twitter, you don't have to go on there to get it. If you don't like Facebook, you don't have to go on there to get it. If you don't like Instagram, if you don't like TikTok, you just sign up for our newsletter. I'm going to put the link down below. Make sure that you're checking that out. It's an awesome feature from Dawg Post. Doesn't cost anything. It will cost you money to go all these games. I was talking to a friend of mine on Thursday, and then I made the phone call to Matt and Ryan about how we're going to have to adjust getting out to Austin. If you are a Georgia fan, 2024 is going to be an extremely expensive season. And you're talking about the opener with Clemson is going to be a couple $100 to get into that game for a pair of people. If you're going to Kentucky and Alabama, those are not break your neck games. Texas is. And then of course you've got, Dawg Post, we usually drop at least a G going to Florida for that game. It's just what it is. I mean, with hotel, gas, food, all of it. I mean, it's an expensive trip. I don't know if people are going to fly to Ole Miss. I mean, I will be flying to Memphis. I don't want to make that drive necessarily. I might. We're just going to have to see. And then the other games are within a stone's throw of the Dogs. But you're traveling to Kentucky. You're traveling to Jacksonville. You're traveling to Ole Miss. You're traveling to Austin. I mean, after a while, it's a lot. It's a lot after a while. Tuscaloosa's not close to Athens. It's not like driving to Columbia. I mean, it's further. It's about like Knoxville, but we have a secret layer between Athens and Knoxville that we hang out with in the North Georgia mountains. So that kind of breaks the trip up for us. But I think that stretch of time, you get 2 home games after the Bama game. And then you're going to go to Austin. You get a week off. You go to Jacksonville. And then you go straight to Ole Miss. That will be like, they can't lose 2 games in that stretch. If they lose 2 games in that stretch, they're not done, particularly if they're undefeated coming into it. But you probably are not playing for the SEC championship at that point, and you're probably like a 6 seed or a 5 seed. probably a 6 seed actually. So that would not be conducive to a great situation. And I think that's the important section of time here for the Dogs. Tell me what you think. Make sure you're signing up for the newsletter down below. Thanks for watching.